Just a reminder, you can catch me recording this podcast live on AMP. AMP is a new live radio app that lets you call in and chat with me in person while recording. Get the app on Apple's App Store and make sure you follow me at John Middlekauff to get notified when I go live. What is going on, everybody? John Middlekauff, 3 and Out podcast. Hopefully you're having a good day and subscribing to the podcast wherever you may listen. Apple, Spotify, we got you covered, as well as on YouTube. If you're watching, make sure you subscribe to the page, like the video, leave a comment as well below. Share with your friends. As you can see, rocking a 3 and Out hat. Go to thevolume.com, FlexFit, go search the merch, go get yourself one in the back, Go Low. Also got trucker hats for Go Low, our golf brand. Go check that out as well, thevolume.com. All the company's merch is up there. A lot going on football-wise. I wanted to dive into Nate Hackett's, as he goes by Nathaniel Hackett, his comments today regarding Sean Payton and the code, as well as some thoughts on Jonathan Taylor, as well as we hit on the quarterback tiers yesterday, but I mainly just focused on like guy 9 to 20. I kind of wanted to go over all the top guys and just some thoughts on everyone heading into the season. So we will discuss some quarterback rankings with the top 8 dudes in the league. So before we dive into that, download the Gametime app. Gametime, the #1 ticketing app in America, the official ticketing app of this podcast. Promo code John to get $20 off anything you want to go see. Are you a fan of a baseball team? Is your team going to play playoff baseball? I got you covered. Are you a fan of an NFL team? Obviously, you probably are listening to this. You want to go see an NFL game? Do you want to go watch college football? Download Gametime, search the game you want to go, use the promo code JOHN, $20 off your first pair of tickets and get on it. If you want to go to a concert, Taylor Swift, Morgan Wallen, any other artist, you name it, Cardi B, I see she's firing microphones at people's faces. Even when she did it, the music kept going. So is she actually singing? But if you want to go check it out, Gametime, promo code John. I wanted to start with this back and forth that, I would say the unofficial end to this all until they play. I saw Mike Tomlin say this game better be on national television. Nathaniel Hackett said today that there is a code basically in response to what Sean Payton had said about him and the job that he did as a head coach. And he kind of prefaced it by saying, listen, my dad was a longtime coach in the NFL, head coach in college. I've been around this profession my whole life, and there's just a right and wrong way you do it, and he broke the code. And I got to be honest, I threw up a red flag. I always struggle with like unwritten rules, codes, things that aren't tangible. It's one of the reasons me and the state of California stopped seeing eye to eye. We did a long time ago. I'm not a big rule follower in general, but when you start throwing out unwritten rules or arbitrary rules, you're going to lose me fast. And I think a lot of the way society works, most businesses work. I just listened to this long thing on Nike and kind of the growth of the company starting back from the 70s. In any business, the back and forth in a competitive industry is pretty ugly. From lawsuits to stealing employees, like, is there a code? No, there are things in contracts that you are supposed to follow, and everything else kind of free game. If you work for the Jets and you work for the Denver Broncos, you are trying to beat the Jets. And if you're the Jets, you're trying to beat the Broncos, because ultimately there may be one playoff spot left and you're battling for it. So in a competitive industry like football, like shoes, like podcasting, there are laws you have to follow, but unwritten codes. I'm sorry, I got that red flag and I think it's kind of bullshit. We've seen it in baseball forever, the unwritten rules about bat flips and pimping home runs and whether pitchers can celebrate and how stupid we all agree they are. Now, there's a way to conduct yourself, but when you are speaking about a team, especially Sean Payton, you're taking over an operation that, let's face it, is kind of broken and needed a major overhaul. Does that reflect Nate? He never said, and people flew into my DMs when I compared Urban Meyer and Hackett. Where I compared them is they both were one and dones and did not even make the season. Like, it's impossible to have a worse one and done than not even coaching all the games. That is a one and done situation is a disaster. We've seen it with Jim Tomsula. We saw it with Steve Wilkes in Arizona. Like, that's an embarrassing time for a coach to only last one season. It's another thing to get run out for whatever reason. Urban, off the field, the dude was a clown. Hackett was just over his head, which happens in football. A lot of coordinators get over their head, who are good coordinators, get over their head when they're a head coach. Well, welcome to the NFL. Welcome to college. But the Hackett situation, like Sean Payton, there's a code. A code what? Because this is what I struggle with, is talking to coaches for a decade plus now, seeing the way players talk off the record, if you get to know any of them, is completely different than we all do on the record, right? It's a lot of the argument right now, can all the players' podcasts overtake the traditional media? And I don't even know what traditional media really means anymore. I don't consider myself that. But I know what the fan wants because I'm a fan at heart. Like, I love sports. I love watching games. If I'm betting on the game, if it's a team I root for or a player I root for, and things start going the wrong way, I get mad and I start talking shit on my couch, right? I'm investing my time, which as you get older, you realize is the most valuable commodity we all have, time. And in football, once a week for 3 or 4 hours, and really more than that because we watch other games, but whoever your squad is, you invest a lot of time. And you get mad when you're watching. It's why that you like when a coach, especially old school coaches, Bill Parcells, Ditka, would talk shit about their own team. You're like, yeah, that's unacceptable, right? And you appreciated that. And Sean Payton, I'll give him credit, he's been pretty candid over the years. Whether you agree or disagree with his tactics, and clearly Roger Goodell once disagreed and booted him for the season, when it just comes to talking about football, when he was the coach, he was actually much more candid and authentic when he was a coach than he was at Fox. Like, I don't remember him really saying anything controversial. And the one thing back to the players thing, like if a players podcast, like they're going to be more famous than a lot of podcast hosts. But I think a reason that a lot of us in the space are able to work, because I'm going to say something that they're not willing to say, which is just the facts that are going on the field. I'm not friends with these people. I'm not looking to hurt feelings. Doesn't matter to me. Because if you just play shitty, you play shitty. It's just a fact. No different. Like, I have a bad podcast, I have a bad podcast. What Nathaniel Hackett did with the Denver Broncos was a complete embarrassment. And if the code is, think how stupid this is. We all agree, whether you're listening to this and you're a Broncos fan, you're an NFL fan, you're a whoever fan, no one would disagree that last year the Denver Broncos season was like a 1 out of 10. It just doesn't get any worse from the way it looked on the field, from just the way it operated, from taking a Hall of Fame quarterback and just turning him into a disaster. And it might be not all the coaching staff's fault. Could be Russell trending the wrong way. But regardless, just an utter train wreck of an operation. We're all thinking it, but we're not allowed to say it because of a code. Like, where does this code exist? Do I have to sign into the code to read the rules of the code? Now, I understand if I'm Andy Reid and I'm playing Belichick, and Belichick's falling on hard times. And let's just say midseason, I'm not even sure if the Chiefs play the Patriots, but let's just do a hypothetical here. And the Patriots are awful. Andy is not going to shit on them, right? And just act like, Bill's lost his fastball. Team is in shambles, probably going to lose his job. You would never say that because a guy has the equity. He's earned the respect. A Pete Carroll, a Mike Tomlin, a John Harbaugh, even if you're your rival, whatever, you respect them at their profession to a certain, level, right? Because they've earned it. They have equity. It's no different with a player. Even if a guy isn't playing at the same standard, like let's use a Russell Wilson, you would still give him the respect of, listen, this guy's had a long career of kicking ass. We're playing him this week. We take him very seriously. But if it's some random rookie or some first-time head coach that's never proven anything, like Joe Judge and Nathaniel Hackett aren't going to get the same leash of respect with tenured coaches as Pete Carroll, Andy Reid, and some of these other coaches. Like, to me, that's a code, right? And I just think anytime that you start talking about the reason we do this is because of something that doesn't actually exist, that is just supposed to be common knowledge, but there's no way to actually find it, is when you get into murky water. So when Nathaniel Hackett claims there's this code, yes, there is a code of like, you'd be an idiot to talk shit about a coach who's having a rough season, who is good at his job, or a player who is trending down, but has had a long, illustrious, successful career. Like, yeah, I 100% agree with that. But when you've never proven anything, like, do you really deserve that much respect? Right? Do you? Because I'd argue you don't. So I'm not a big fan of unwritten rules. I'm not a fan of quote unquote codes that protect everyone the same way in any industry. Because in certain industries, certain people deserve more respect than others. Why? They're much more successful. They're good at their job. Just because you're in a given industry and just because you're in a position of power does not mean that automatically I have to give you respect. You have to earn that, right? Whatever you do, whether you're a football coach, whether you're the CEO of Apple, whether you're listening to me as a podcast host, right? Is this guy any good? What's he saying? Is he entertaining? Should I keep listening? Right? There's an earned equity to everything we do. No different with our families. Like it crosses everything we do in life. So this notion that Nathaniel Hackett, just because he's a coaching lifer and his father coached, is off limits if another coach who has accomplished a lot, been to the playoffs a ton of times, won a Super Bowl, like knows what he's doing, wants to take some shots. Now you can argue he went too far, but this notion that he can't criticize the operation to me is laughable. It really is. Because here's the other thing. The only person and people Sean Payton are worried about are those in the walls where he works. You think he gives a shit about any of these other teams right now? Maybe he still cares a little about the Saints because Mickey Loomis is like his best friend. And he wouldn't do that there. Why? Because he respects the guy. He wouldn't say this about other coaches that he knows and likes. But I don't think he has a high opinion of Nathaniel Hackett, right? That much is clear. And on top of that, he's just focused on his operation. So what about the unwritten rules of I'll do anything? I'll run through a wall, right? I'll cut off a pinky to make sure we win. That's all I care about. Whether I offend some people along the way, who cares? You think Adidas gave a shit about Nike when they tried to put them under in like the 70s? Right? You think anyone would hesitate in the podcast space if they can get all my advertisers for them and take all that money? They wouldn't. I mean, they wouldn't. They might pretend to, and that's to be the code where you pretend to think something differently. I hate that. I hate phonies. I hate frauds. I hate hypocrites. Now, there's a way to treat people, but if you don't know the guy and you're going to compete against the guy, here's the other thing with coaches, right? I have a hard time with like a member of Congress, like we got to go to war when they don't really have any skin in the game. They're not going to war. Their kids aren't going to war. It might be your kid or yourself or me or whoever at the time, depending on how old you are. Like we all have different skin in the game. It's like, yeah, it's easy for you to say. You see this in football a lot, like owners get on their high horse and start talking. You see it with Irsay, you see it with Jerry. They don't really impact the game. They're not coaching it. They're not playing it. But to me, anytime a player or a coach wants to put extra skin in the game, they're the ones out there. They're the ones, on Sunday or Saturday or whatever day you're playing. You could even be in high school that have to get the job done. We're going to look at the head coach and we're going to look at the players. They're the ones that we're going to be critical of, and the coordinators if they say something out of pocket. But if you can back it up, I never have a problem with people that are quote unquote viewed as like cocky or arrogant if they back it up. If you consistently don't, you're just kind of an idiot, right? Like if Hackett or Joe Judge or the Pat Shurmurs or all these failed coaches talk like Sean Payton, we would laugh. Like Brandon Staley doesn't have the juice to operate and talk like this, right? Now, if you tell me he wins 2 of the next 4 Super Bowls, he can say whatever he wants, whenever he wants. Now, you can argue that that's not the right way to conduct yourself. I'd argue that's a subjective way to look at everything, right? Because Deion Sanders conducted himself a lot differently than, let's say, Joe Montana or John Elway or Jerry Rice, right? Every player acts and operates a little bit differently than someone else. That's why we're all individuals. But if you back it up in whatever you're doing, I have no problem with it. So this code talk, absolutely laughable to me. One thing on Jonathan Taylor, I hadn't really thought about this, was I was talking to Gottlieb. I do call-ins on his radio show like once a week. And he brought up something that never crossed my mind, that he thought that potentially, and it makes a lot of sense, that during that running back call, that it kind of got a guy like Jonathan Taylor's juices flowing. Like, God, we are getting screwed. God, this is BS. Like, think how many times, whether you talk to someone at work, whether you talk to a friend about one of your relationship, and they kind of either jade you or put you in a bad headspace. And then you go into something, and then maybe a week or 2 later, you realize, like, God, it was just all based on that conversation that I did not handle it correctly. And Jonathan Taylor, who tweets out a couple days ago, like, refuting all the reports that back injury and he's going to go on NFI. I looked up yesterday. He was at practice in a hoodie. It's like, no, actually the reports seem like something's going on. He's pouting around practice. I have no problem. And I use this as an example because it's the most recent example, but I also think they all backed it up, is when A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, and Deebo Samuel, all second-round picks like Jonathan Taylor, all wanted new contracts. And it was like time to get paid. And DK went, I dominated. I have dominated since I showed up. AJ went, you gave me Ryan Tannehill, and I was one of the best players in the league. And Deebo went, we were going to miss the playoffs, and I said, F this, and I carried our ass right to the NFC Championship game. Me, Deebo Samuel. Time to pay us all, and they all got paid. When you have that year, and then you're going to get paid in another 2 years, so there's a gap year, and in that gap year, you don't really get it done for whatever reason, maybe an injury, but it does not reflect the other years, you have less of an argument in sports, especially when you're at a position that I think we question whether to be paid. So Jonathan Taylor, who's surely amped up from the McCaffreys, the Derrick Henrys, the Nick Chubbs, all these guys I'm listing have been paid. Even Saquon's like, I'm in it, guys. I'll do whatever it takes. And then he just signs the $11 million contract. It's like, I'm ready for practice. And then you get Jonathan Taylor, who kind of was like forced to go rogue in this position. Now, partly it could be he's got a new agent, a lot of different variables here. But it's just kind of, I would say it's just kind of turned into a clown show with Irsay, with him. And we talked about this yesterday. Shane Steichen, welcome to the NFL. Good luck operating this. But it just shows you sometimes, I remember Coward back in his, the 4-letter network. We don't give free ads here. When he used to have a radio show, he said the two things that can make men do dumb things, women and money. And that's just, it's always been true and always will be true. Clearly money, and listen, that's a human nature reaction when you think you're getting screwed. It doesn't put you in a good headspace. But this situation doesn't feel, as of recording this in the middle, almost dinner time on Tuesday, doesn't feel like it's any closer to be resolved. And I would expect it to get even weirder because the owner's a whack job. And now Jonathan Taylor and his agent feel they are, just getting the short end of the stick here. I wanted to fire through really quick because yesterday we talked basically about the from Matt Stafford all the way down to basically Justin Fields, a group of, probably 12, 13 quarterbacks, basically from like guy 9 all the way to like the early 20s. And I didn't include Mahomes, Burrow, Rodgers, Allen, Herbert, Hurts, and Lawrence, and Lamar. And I thought, you know what? Let's go through those guys. And I'll put them in the way I have them viewed heading into the season, and just some overall thoughts heading into 2023, and just macro view on all of them. Patrick Mahomes, number one. I mean, I had some people DM me, should he get his tier of by himself? Wouldn't have had a problem with that. To me, when you just have number one next to your name, like, who cares? He's clearly the best quarterback in the league. He has had one of the great 5-year stretches in league history, MVP, Super Bowls. There's been the Favrean fun do it of the mid-90s. He kind of feels like the Steph Curry of football. He's just the total package. If you watch the Netflix show, married at a young age, just got his shit together. Clearly the brother is not the easiest guy to deal with in terms of and he just handles these situations as smoothly as humanly possible. He's everything you want in professional sports when you talk about the best player in your team, right? Clearly in football, plays the most important position, but he's just the total package. As a guy, obviously from a physical standpoint, from just an instinctive standpoint, he can make things that when they're not there. And one thing I think that's underrated, and I don't think because it's impossible to quantify, but we don't talk about this enough with position players. And I remember Coach Reed told me years ago, he's like, you know what makes Tyreek so special? Obviously, he's faster than everyone else, but his football IQ is elite. I can tell him and teach him anything. He gets it immediately. It's why we're able to do so much, to go along with Patrick and Kelsey, who also have elite football IQ. It's why when you put those three together, in my opinion, they're the most talented. They're not going to go down as the most accomplished because the big three in the mid-90s in Dallas won more. And those guys, Tyreek only won the one Super Bowl. He wasn't there for this last one, but that was as good as I've ever seen. And I think intelligence is something we don't talk about enough just with players in general, but Mahomes has it in spades. So he's everything you want. And I do think he's going to embark on this in a weird way to say it, like the second half of his career, more likely the second third of his career. And this is where I think he can just kind of staple the passing records, the touchdowns, and just kind of add the stats, which winning is going to continue to come, and just kind of go on that stretch of, the mid to late, early 2010s with Brady, the mid 2000s with Peyton. I know during that time with Brady, he didn't win Super Bowls and Peyton only won the one. I mean, he's already got two. You get to three, you pass Elway. You're really just looking up. Yeah, I think if Mahomes can get to Montana, which is a tall order, win two more, basically double his total. Yeah, I think there's a chance that we could look at it in like Brady at 1A and almost this guy at 1B. I just think that's kind of where we're headed. Number 2, Joe Burrow. A lot like Patrick Mahomes, the total package, right? Tangibles, football character, football intelligence, good looking. Part of being a quarterback is being good looking, right? It's like Peyton Manning. Most guys aren't Peyton Manning. He's not the best looking guy. Tom Brady, Joe Montana. Like, I like my guy to look good. Troy Aikman, right? Burrow Mahomes. Like, I want my guy to look good. I want to put him on the billboards. Manning can pull it off because he dominated, but he's not the best looking dude. Burrow might be the best looking dude of this crew, who's just an elite player. And to me, his story, a lot like Mahomes, was not just can't miss guy like a Trevor Lawrence, right? Had to transfer in college. Urban Meyer didn't think he was any good. Couldn't play there. Was never going to start. Goes to LSU. His first year starting, not great. That second year has the greatest season in the history of college football as a team. And then comes to the Bengals, who had fallen on really hard times. I mean, we're kind of becoming the butt of everyone's joke again. And within 18 months has them in the Super Bowl. And then the following year has them right back in the AFC Championship with a very good chance to win. Right? I mean, this guy, from a statistical standpoint, he almost has a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. His numbers in the playoffs, 67%, 9 touchdown, 4 picks. Winning when it matters to me means everything. I don't care what sport you play. Tennis, golf, football, baseball. I know the volume to this thing, most overrated athletes. I, of course, went with James Harden. Derek Jeter was on that picture. You could argue his regular season, because in baseball, regular season matters a lot. Yeah, is he a little overhyped statistically relative to some other players? But Derek Jeter got it done when it matters. Derek Jeter's not only not overrated, you could argue he's underrated, because I want guys, when the lights are the brightest and everyone's watching, you get it done or you don't. Mahomes and Burrow 100% do. And I think Burrow, I think we're looking at kind of, now we'll get to Josh Allen, but as of right now, that's kind of the Brady and Manning going right now. Number 3, I have Aaron Rodgers here. I have him over Josh Allen. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to come firing back. I would expect a massive fucking season. I expect him smack dab in the middle of the MVP conversation. We're talking 40-plus touchdowns, mentally in a great spot. I think their team's going to be really good. Question marks at tackle for sure, but the veteran presence of just understanding, like, unlike Tua, who can't really avoid it, like, Rodgers throw the ball away, he'll get down. I think they're going to be dynamic. I think there's a chance we look up, assuming some health, I think the Jets can win 13 games. I think when the dust settles, I might pick them to win the East. Call me crazy, but I might take them over the Bills. And I like the Bills. I'm a Sean McDermott guy. He's one of the handful of coaches in the NFL I can text, and he'll text me back. So I'm not like anti-Bills. I just might, like, I hold Rodgers to pretty high esteem and high regard. Like, I think when you talk about players, I'm 38 years old. I feel pretty confident over the last 20 talking about all the athletes in all the sports that I've watched. To me, Rodgers is easily on the short list of the best guy I've watched. Like, I know he's not as accomplished as Tom Brady, but physically, I got him. Brady won. I think I got him right there with Peyton. I think he's that good. And he has got a chance to really stamp it this year. Now, the difference is Peyton went to multiple Super Bowls, right? Went to 2 in Indy, went to 2 in Denver. Part of Rodgers' problem is he's been to all those NFC Championship games, can't get out. I think if he gets the Jets to Super Bowl, I give Peyton Manning, you get to Super Bowl and lose. Like, you get credit in my book. Tom Brady got to some Super Bowls and lost. John Elway got some Super Bowls and lost. Marino got to Super Bowl and lost. You're allowed to get to a Super Bowl and lose. You just get to the Jets to the Super Bowl. You could argue that's it wouldn't be as good as winning, but it's like 1B. To get the Packers they go to Super Bowls. They've been going to Super Bowls well before I was born. So I'm expecting big things. Number 4, Josh Allen. I think it's a pretty big year for Josh Allen, because I think clearly Mahomes and Burrow have separated themselves. Again, we're nitpicking here, but to me, they're above him Love Josh Allen. He's physically everything I'd want in a quarterback. 6'5", can fucking run, got an absolute howitzer, unafraid, tough, guy, Valley, California guy, so I root for him extra hard. But he can get a little loosey-goosey, and he's not Mr. Accuracy. Last couple of years, 63%. I think a lot of people are kind of circling the waters. Was it Brian Daboll, Dorsey? Are they going to take a step back? Burrow's been in the Super Bowl. He's lost. Obviously, Mahomes has won it. Like, can they take the next step? I mean, last year, it's hard to get that taste out of your mouth, them getting just mollywopped in the second round by the Bengals. Like, it's hard to get that visual. Josh Allen's going to get to the point a little like an NBA player. It's like, we know you're really good. You're clearly one of the best players in the league. No one doubts all your skills. It's like, can you take over in a playoff run? And, he's fun to watch through the regular season, but we're just going to judge this guy in January. Because the guy, even if Burrow is close to his contemporary, because if Mahomes in his own tier, like Burrow's kind of kicked some serious ass in the playoffs. I'm not saying Josh hasn't, because a couple years ago, it was not his fault that they lost that Chiefs game. But I just think there's going to be some tangible pressure just on that organization. You're paying a lot of guys. Obviously, Josh makes a lot of money. So just get it done. And it's hard. I mean, Chiefs are unreal. Bengals are awesome. All the other teams in the AFC. It's a difficult conference to navigate, but tangible pressure. Another guy, just anytime you get paid, we're just going to view you different. Now, when you look at his first two seasons, it's actually pretty comparable to Josh Allen. So I got Herbert 5. So I go Mahomes, Burrow, Rodgers, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. His first 2 years statistically, and he wasn't even supposed to start. The Chargers doctor stuck what's his name in the kidney, almost killed him or whatever. And Herbert found out 5 minutes before the game, and the rest is history. And they kind of lucked into it. And rumors are, and I don't blame them, because I liked Herbert more than Tua, and it's easy to say that out loud now. But I wasn't the biggest, I didn't view either of them. I'm stunned that Herbert is this good. Let me say that. I'm just not a small quarterback with a lollipop arm. Like, I wouldn't have drafted Tua that far. Historically, Herbert coming out of college probably viewed more to me like a teens pick or in the 20s. But they struck oil, and I'm pretty sure Tua was higher on their board than Herbert. So they got lucky that Miami took Tua first, but they got him and they paid him. And now I heard some people saying that defensively the last couple of years, obviously you just look up the stats. They have not been good. Last year they had a stretch where they were playing pretty well and they fell apart when it mattered, blowing coverages all night long against the Jags. But people will come back like, Herbert can't miss certain guys in certain big spots in a playoff game when I'm paying you $50 million. True. So a little less pressure than Josh Allen, because I'll tell you this. It's hard to win with the Chargers, right? Like, we feel pretty good about the Bills operation. Legit coach. We can nitpick Sean McDermott, but Sean McDermott's in a different stratosphere than Brandon Staley as of 2023 heading into week 1, right? Maybe that can change. I don't believe it will. I believe this will be Brandon Staley's last year. But the Bills clearly under, Bean and McDermott have a much more stable operation than what Herbert's dealing with. Their defense with the Chargers has just been very hit or miss. Last year, statistically, Herbert was a little down, but he was dealing with wide receiver injuries constantly. If you've seen any of the clips, the dude they took from TCU in the first round has made some pretty remarkable plays. And I'm excited to watch that kind of combination, because I think the Chargers, if the coach can just stay out of his own way, could just be really good. But we say that every year about that team. Number 6, Jalen Hurts. I think this guy could just, as Rodgers eventually fades out, if Hurts is going to look like he did last year, year in, year out, that's what a top 5 quarterback looks like. And what he did is why I have him above Lamar. Like, what he did in the Super Bowl, from a passing standpoint, you can't ask for any more. That's exactly what you want. I mean, he outplayed Mahomes. So, the intangibles off the chart. I actually think the intangibles, in a weird way, define Jalen Hurts, because every single time it's like, yeah, he could have just gone, pouted, or not gotten better. Alabama gets benched for Tua, right? Has to transfer to Oklahoma. Goes in the second round. Most people like myself, you draft him in the second round, backs up Carson Wentz. Begins starting. It's like, God, he's just not good enough. Dude just improves. How many self-help people? It's so cliche, right? Just get a little better every day, get 1% better. It almost sounds stupid when you say it out loud, but there is some truth to just every day, if you just have a to-do list, whatever you do, whatever profession you're in, if you just make progress, like you're either going forward or you're going backward. Nothing really stays the same in life, right? Because if you're staying the same, you're getting passed. And Hurts has just found a way to get better. Now, he benefits a lot. Really good organization. Awesome GM. Wheeler and dealer. Adds pieces. Coaching staff. High level. But I'd be pretty bullish if I was an Eagles fan because, again, physically awesome. You guys have had good physical quarterbacks. I was there with Michael Vick, Donovan McNabb. This guy feels like the kind of the total package upstairs. Number 7. And this might be a little controversial, but not just this year, but moving forward, I got Trevor Lawrence ahead of Lamar Jackson. And I think Trevor Lawrence might just go on a stretch where watch the fuck out. I texted someone with the Jags the other day. I said, how's he looking? He said he looks exactly like you'd think he would look. This guy has a spotlight on him since he was 14. He's been viewed as the real deal and lived up to it every single season of his career. And clearly, rookie season, he gets a pass with that Urban Meyer joke. Peyton Manning, Jesus, if he played quarterback, couldn't have overcome that thing. But Trevor Lawrence, the total package, he proved it last year. And as my buddy said, it's not even just him. It's like Calvin Ridley, bro. Baller. Stud. Watch out. So they add a piece. They already had some good pieces. I expect the Jags to just be a consistent playoff team moving forward. They have a Super Bowl winning coach. People think like, and listen, maybe I'm too hard on the Texans. I saw Albert Breer tell Colin. He's like, or excuse me, not the Texans, the Titans. He's like, I think the Titans could be better than people think. And he's indirectly talking right to me. And I think Mike Vrabel's like a top 5 coach in the league. But I'm more betting on they got Trevor Lawrence and they got a Super Bowl winning coach. You give me a star young quarterback and a proven coach. Like I bet on that over Vrabel, stud, Ryan Tannehill and Will Levis. Like I'm betting on the Jags to just trend like the Bills, like the Bengals, like the Chiefs, not in terms of going to the Super Bowl, but just playoffs every year. That's where we're going to chalk them up. And I'm going to do that until I'm proven wrong. And last but not least, Lamar, who a couple years ago, I would have been laughed at by having him this low. But I think there are some question marks because he ran a very specific offense, a lot like Jalen Hurts a couple years ago, and it worked. But it didn't really work in the playoffs. Why? Because in the playoffs, you have to be able to pass. And on 3rd and 8 and on 3rd and 9, on big downs in a tie game in the second half, you either can complete it or you can't. Now, a lot of people are going to come back to me and say, well, he hasn't had the receivers, the best receiving core he's ever had. Okay. But can he play? And we'll see how the offense actually looks by the time the season comes around. But are they just scrapping everything that we witnessed, that collegiate offense? And are they just going to have like one back, 4 or 5 wide? They're just going to spread it out. And he's going to sling it around game in and game out. Because one of his best attributes, if not his best, is you could argue he's the best athlete in the league. He's arguably the best running quarterback we've ever seen. Michael Vick was remarkable, but he took hits. Lamar can like avoid hits down the field. He turns into like an elite skill guy with the ball in his hands. So are you just going to pass nonstop and take that away from him? And can he just throw the ball, let's just assume 35, 40 times a game, week in, week out in just a pass-heavy offense and be fine? I'm fascinated to see. Love the guy. Know people that work there that swear by the kid. Like I'm pro Lamar Jackson. Like this list, I like all these guys, right? Love Hurts, love Lawrence, love Lamar. Do you know what all these guys have in common? Rodgers would be the outlier, but he's the only old guy. Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Herbert, Hurts, Lawrence, Lamar. Don't they all have in common? Character, intangibles, coachability, good teammates. This shit ain't that complicated. You can't be a slap at quarterback unless you're like fucking Marino and be a good player. It encompasses too much. There's too much pressure. All the top guys are all really good guys and all well-liked. Rodgers had his moments, but Rodgers is a good example. Even if 5, 6, 7 years ago, people said, he wasn't always the best. He was so good it didn't matter. These other guys, and I give these guys a lot of respect, man. I really do. I'm 38 years old. If you paid me right now $60 million, and I knew for the next 3 or 4 years I was going to make 60, I hope, and I'm pretty confident because I like what I do, that my work ethic wouldn't change. But how would it not? I mean, there'd be just some elements. It's different when you're a player, right? But you have so many more options in life. Yet it doesn't feel like Mahomes, Burrow's about to get paid. Allen's been paid. Herbert's been paid. Hurt's been paid. Lawrence probably been paid well before high school. Lamar's been paid. It doesn't feel like it phases any of their work ethics. And I respect that a lot about that generation. That any player in this modern day sporting world that can make 30, 40, 50 million dollars a year. Listen, when I was a kid, guys making $5, $10 million, that was a ton of money in the 90s. Even with inflation and stuff, I don't think it was 40, $50 million. If Jaylen Brown can continue to not dribble but still try hard at $70 million a year, it's respectable. And I know that's what they're being paid to. Yeah, it's another thing. You start getting direct deposits like $2 million every other week. You're like, holy shit, good living. So I'm very excited to watch all these guys. I mean, these guys make the league. I think that other group kind of determines how the league looks on a weekly basis, but the top guys carry the league. That's the way any industry works, especially in sports. And when it comes to star quarterbacks, it's definitely been that way for a long time now, and it's never been more top heavy. Just in terms of the importance of these guys, it's why we've changed the rules, because we can't function as a league, and the health of the game is so dependent on them being there, because that's what gets us sitting and watching the game. We all watched the NFC Championship game. You could have turned it off in the third quarter. If you weren't an Eagles fan, I bet a lot of you went for a walk. It was over. It was a joke. We watched for star and starting quarterbacks. And these guys, this crew from a talent standpoint, all very young. I mean, all these guys beside Rodgers are under 30. Several of them are like 26, 27 and under. Just an exciting crew of guys.